Marcus Webb was having what he considered a perfectly ordinary Tuesday aboard the research vessel Darwin's Revenge, when the proximity alarms started screaming like a caffeinated smoke detector. Now, most people might find the sudden appearance of an unknown alien vessel cause for concern, maybe even pants-sweating terror. Marcus? He grabbed his camera. "Oh wow, look at those hull modifications," he muttered, pressing his face against the observation deck's reinforced glass, like a kid at an aquarium. "Those aren't meteorite scars, those are definitely territorial markings. Fascinating territorial markings." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom with all the calm of someone gargling glass. "All hands, we have an unidentified vessel requesting permission to board. I repeat, requesting permission to board, with what appears to be ceremonial weapons." Marcus practically bounced on his toes. First contact protocols were clear: maintain diplomatic composure, avoid sudden movements, and under no circumstances should the xenobiologist start taking measurements. He was already reaching for his measuring tape. The airlock hissed open with the kind of dramatic timing that suggested these aliens had clearly watched too many human movies. What stepped through could only be described as evolution's answer to the question, what if a crocodile went to law school and then joined a death metal band? Captain Vextar stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in midnight black scales that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His elongated skull housed rows of teeth that looked like they'd been personally sharpened by a particularly vindictive knife enthusiast. Ceremonial bone ornaments hung from his muscular frame, and his yellow eyes held the kind of predatory intelligence that usually preceded something becoming someone else's lunch. Behind him scuttled what Marcus could only assume was the communications officer, a smaller alien that looked like someone had crossed a ferret with a satellite dish. This creature bounced excitedly on 6 legs, chittering in rapid-fire alien while pointing various scanning devices at everything in sight. "Oh my God," Marcus breathed, raising his camera. "You're absolutely gorgeous." Vextar's head tilted with the mechanical precision of a predator reassessing its prey. In his native tongue, which sounded like rocks being ground in a cement mixer, he spoke what were clearly words of ritual challenge and dominance. The little communications officer, who would later introduce himself as Squeaks, frantically tapped at a translation device. He says, "Tremble before the shadow of Claudith, small flesh thing, for your terror shall be my sustenance, and your scream shall echo through the void for all eternity." Marcus lowered his camera and blinked. "That's beautiful. Is that poetry? That sounds like poetry. Do you mind if I record that? The phonetic structure is absolutely incredible." Vextar's intimidating posture wavered slightly. He exchanged glances with Squeaks, who shrugged all 6 of his shoulders in universal bewilderment. "I mean," Marcus continued, completely oblivious to the confused silence, "the way you use those guttural stops combined with the sibilant undertones, it's like linguistic artwork. Have you considered performance poetry? I bet you'd kill at open mic nights." Squeaks whispered something that sounded urgent into his translator. Vextar straightened to his full height and let out what was unmistakably meant to be a terrifying roar. The sound echoed through the ship's corridors like the dying scream of some primordial beast. Marcus applauded. "Incredible lung capacity," he said admiringly. "The acoustics in here aren't great, but I bet in your natural habitat that carries for miles. Is that a mating call or territorial display? Oh, please, tell me you have recordings of different regional dialects." Vextar's roar died in his throat like a deflating balloon. He looked at Squeaks again, who was frantically consulting what appeared to be a handbook titled Conquering Species for Dummies in 17 different languages. This was not going according to plan. Vextar decided to try a different approach. Clearly, this human was too simple-minded to understand subtle threats. Time for the full intimidation display. He extended his claws with a metallic snikt that would have made Wolverine jealous. Each talon was roughly the size of a railroad spike, and gleamed with what was definitely not nail polish. Then he opened his mouth wide enough to park a small spacecraft, revealing not 1 but 3 rows of serrated teeth, each one dripping with luminescent venom that hissed when it hit the floor. Marcus pulled out a notebook. "Oh wow, retractable claws with what appears to be a titanium carbide composite structure," he scribbled frantically. "And is that a paralytic neurotoxin or more of a digestive enzyme? The bioluminescence suggests some kind of chemical reaction. Do you mind if I get a sample?" From behind Vextar, a new voice rumbled with the patience of someone explaining basic math to a particularly slow toddler. "Captain, perhaps we should simply proceed to the traditional disemboweling phase." This was Fangmore, Vextar's second in command, who looked like someone had given a shark anger management issues and a gym membership. His scarred hide told the story of 1,000 battles, most of which had ended with him standing over something's rapidly cooling corpse. "The intimidation ritual is sacred, Fangmore," Vextar hissed back. "I will not dishonor our ancestors by skipping steps." Marcus looked up from his notes. "Oh, you have traditional practices? That's wonderful. Cultural preservation is so important. Are you hungry? I've got some protein bars in my bag. They're chocolate chip, but I think I saw some salt and vinegar ones too." Vextar's left eye developed a twitch. He raised his arms above his head and began the war dance of inevitable doom, a ritualistic display that had sent entire civilizations fleeing in terror. His movements were hypnotic, deadly, each gesture promising violence beyond imagination. Marcus started taking video. "The biomechanics are incredible. Look at that hip flexibility. Do you stretch before battles? I bet you never get lower back pain." "Sir," Fangmore whispered urgently, "the human appears to be immune to psychological warfare." "I can see that, Fangmore." Squeaks bounced over to Marcus with his translation device. "He wants to know if you require medical attention because your fear response seems to be malfunctioning." "Oh, that's so sweet," Marcus beamed. "No, I'm fine, just excited. It's not every day you meet apex predators with such sophisticated cultural practices. Do you guys have a social hierarchy based on hunting prowess? I'm working on a paper about predator-prey dynamics in spacefaring civilizations." Vextar completed his war dance and let out another roar, this one containing what his people called the frequency of final terror, a sound that could literally frighten prey to death. Marcus fumbled for his phone. "Hold on, let me check the decibel level on this. My sound app maxed out at 120, that's concert-level volume. Your vocal cords must be incredibly developed. Do you ever get hoarse?" Fangmore leaned closer to his captain. "Sir, I'm beginning to suspect this species might be more dangerous than our intelligence reports suggested. With this, the Mai appear to have weaponized cheerfulness." Vextar stared at Marcus, who was now offering everyone hand sanitizer because you never know what kind of bacteria might be floating around in space. The human's complete inability to recognize mortal danger was starting to feel less like stupidity and more like the kind of confidence that came from being an apex predator yourself. A very terrifying thought began to form in Vextar's mind. What if humans weren't prey at all? Vextar decided that if terror wouldn't work, perhaps pride would. After all, what prey species could resist cowering before the mighty accomplishments of the galaxy's apex predators? "Human," he announced with the kind of dramatic flair usually reserved for award ceremonies, "you will now witness the glory wall of our conquered foes." He gestured grandly toward what Marcus had initially mistaken for decorative wall panels. Upon closer inspection, they were actually display cases containing, well, bits of things that had clearly once been attached to other things that were no longer available for comment. "Behold," Vextar proclaimed, "the remains of the crystalline monks of Zirion Prime, who thought their diamond hides would protect them." Marcus pressed his nose against the glass like he was at a museum. "Wow, look at that mineral structure. The way the light refracts through the crystalline matrix is beautiful. Do you know what their diet was like? I bet the silicate content was incredible." Fangmore whispered. "Sir, he's taking notes again." "I can see that, Fangmore." Vextar moved to the next display with increasing desperation. "And here, the acid-spitting venomous slugs of the Gamma Nebula. Their corrosive saliva could dissolve titanium in seconds." "Oh my God, enzymatic dissolution," Marcus breathed, sketching rapidly. "The biochemistry must be fascinating. I wonder if they had specialized storage organs to prevent self-digestion. Did you happen to preserve any tissue samples?" Squeaks bounced over helpfully. "Actually, we did keep some specimens in the freezer next to the victory snacks." "Squeaks," Fangmore growled, warningly. "What? The human seems nice. He shared his protein bars." Vextar's claws scraped against the floor as he led Marcus to the centerpiece of his collection, the wall of final screams. This was a sophisticated audio-visual display that played the last moments of their conquered prey on an endless loop. The screams, pleas, and death rattles of a dozen species echoed through the chamber in surround sound. Marcus tilted his head thoughtfully. "The acoustics in here are all wrong for this kind of display. You're getting terrible echo distortion off these metal walls. Have you considered sound-dampening panels? Maybe some fabric wall hangings? They'd really improve the audio quality." "The audio quality," Vextar repeated slowly. "Oh yeah, and your recording equipment is probably from like 3 generations ago. The dynamic range is all compressed. You're losing all the subtle tonal variations that make each species unique. I could recommend some better microphones if you want." Fangmore's jaw hung open. He's giving us technical advice on recording death screams? I can hear that, Fang Moore. Marcus continued his critique with the enthusiasm of a film student at their first festival. And the lighting is way too dramatic. You want to capture the natural fear response, not create artificial shadows that obscure facial expressions. Natural lighting brings out the genuine terror much better. Squeak was frantically taking notes. Should I write this down? This seems important. Also, Marcus added helpfully, you might want to consider getting consent forms. I know they're about to die anyway, but it's just good practice for documentation purposes. Shows professionalism. Vexstar stared at this human who was calmly discussing the technical aspects of recording final moments like he was reviewing camera equipment on a shopping website. A cold realization crept through his scales like winter frost. Fagmore, he whispered, I'm beginning to think we've made a terrible mistake. How so, sir? This isn't a prey species, this is something much worse. Who's worse than prey, sir? Vexstar watched Marcus measure the display cases with his tape measure while humming what sounded like elevator music. A species that treats our most terrifying achievements like a hobby show. The holographic display flickered to life with the kind of dramatic timing that suggested Admiral Claudeth had been practicing his entrances. The projection materialized into the form of what could only be described as Vexstar's worst nightmare, crossed with a tax auditor. Claudeth stood 12 feet tall, covered in scars that told the story of 1,000 victories, with eyes like molten gold and a voice that could curdle milk at 50 paces. Captain Vexstar! The Admiral's voice boomed through the ship's speakers, causing several small objects to vibrate off nearby shelves. I trust you have good news about the human infestation in Sector 7. Vexstar straightened to attention, his scales rattling nervously. Admiral, sir, the situation is developing. Developing. Claudeth's projection leaned forward menacingly. Captain, your orders were simple. Board their vessel, terrorize the humans into submission, and report back with coordinates for our next hunting ground. How exactly does one develop such a straightforward massacre? In the background, Marcus could be heard cheerfully humming while reorganizing the aliens' weapons storage. You guys really need a better inventory system, his voice drifted over. I've color-coded everything by threat level and cross-referenced it with your cultural significance notes. The plasma rifles were just thrown in a pile next to the ceremonial bone hammers. That's how accidents happen. Admiral Claudeth's golden eyes narrowed to slits. Captain, why is there a human voice discussing inventory management on a vessel that should be running red with terror-induced blood? Well, sir, Vexstar began, his voice cracking like a teenager asking someone to prom. It turns out humans are somewhat more resilient than our intelligence reports suggested. Resilient? The Admiral's laugh could have stripped paint. Captain, our intelligence reports indicated humans were soft, pink, anxious creatures who spent most of their time staring at small rectangular screens and arguing about trivial matters. They're supposed to be the galaxy's most easily dominated species. Squeaks bounced into view, practically vibrating with excitement. Admiral, sir, if I may. The human has taught me 17 new curse words, fixed our navigation system, improved our heating efficiency by 30%, and shown us how to make something called coffee that makes you feel like you can conquer small moons. Fangmore nodded grimly. He also reorganized our tactical displays for better ergonomics and suggested we install mood lighting in the torture chambers for what he called ambiance. Ambience, Admiral Claudeth repeated, with the kind of slow horror usually reserved for discovering your dentist is actually 3 raccoons in a coat. Marcus appeared in the hologram's field of view, waving cheerfully while carrying what appeared to be a steaming mug. Oh, hello there, you must be the Admiral. Impressive projection quality, though you might want to adjust the contrast settings. The detailed definition around your scales is getting a bit pixelated. Admiral Claudeth's mouth opened and closed several times without sound, like a fish trying to explain quantum physics. I've been having the most wonderful time with your crew, Marcus continued conversationally. They've got such fascinating hunting traditions, very ritualistic. I'm thinking of writing a paper on it for the Journal of Xenological Anthropology. Would you mind if I interviewed you about command hierarchies in predator societies? He wants to interview me, the Admiral whispered to himself. Also, Marcus added helpfully, I noticed your ship's database has some security vulnerabilities. Nothing major, just some outdated encryption protocols. I took the liberty of updating them. Your password was Death123, which isn't great from a cybersecurity standpoint. I changed it to something more secure. Vexstar cleared his throat nervously. Sir, The human appears to have somehow accessed our most classified systems while we were showing him the trophy room. How? Claudette's voice had risen to a pitch that suggested his vocal cords were filing a formal complaint. I asked nicely, Marcus said, as if this explained everything. Squeaks was very helpful, lovely fellow. Did you know he speaks 14 languages? Very underutilized in his current role, if you ask me. Admiral Claudith stared at the projection for a long moment, his breathing heavy and labored. Captain Vexstar, I want you to listen very carefully to my next words. Yes, sir. Abort the mission. Immediately. Return to base. Do not engage the humans further. Do not accept any more of their help. Do not let them reorganize anything else. And whatever you do, do not give them access to our fleet communications. A cheerful beeping sound echoed through the ship. Oh, too late for that last one, Marcus called out. I was trying to boost your signal strength and accidentally connected to your whole fleet network. Hope that's okay. I left everyone a nice message about proper equipment maintenance schedules. The hologram of Admiral Claudeth flickered and died, but not before they all heard what sounded suspiciously like muffled screaming. Marcus had wandered off to examine what he'd cheerfully described as the most fascinating waste recycling system I've ever seen, when he stumbled upon what was clearly meant to be a private strategy meeting. The aliens huddled in their war room like support group members discussing their shared trauma, completely unaware that their subject of discussion was currently 3 corridors away, probably reorganizing their emergency supplies. Brothers, Vexstar was saying, his voice carrying the weight of someone whose entire worldview had been professionally demolished. We must face the truth. We are not dealing with prey. Fangmore nodded gravely, absently polishing a ceremonial blade that Marcus had somehow managed to sharpen while they weren't looking. The human has violated every known law of predator-prey dynamics. When shown our most terrifying displays, he asked if we had gift shop merchandise. He complimented my roar technique, added a warrior named Skarma, whose reputation for intimidation had been built over 3 decades of successful hunts. He said I had excellent breath control and suggested I try vocal exercises to extend my range. I'd been accidentally practicing them all morning. Squeaks bounced nervously in the corner. I may have made things worse. He asked about our mating rituals and I told him about the dance of violent courtship. He said it reminded him of something called salsa dancing and offered to teach us some moves that would really impress potential partners. The room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's engines, which Marcus had also somehow optimized for better fuel efficiency. What have we learned about his species? Vexstar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Fangmore consulted a datapad with the grim efficiency of someone reading their own death sentence. According to our database, humans evolved on a death world where literally everything was trying to kill them. The weather, the animals, the plants, the geography, even the air composition changed randomly just to keep things interesting. Go on, Vexstar said, though his tone suggested he really didn't want anyone to go on. Their apex predators included creatures with names like sharks, tigers, and bears, but apparently those weren't the scary ones. The scary ones were things called mosquitoes, tax collectors, and customer service representatives. Skarmok shuddered. What kind of hellscape produces creatures that consider our most terrifying forms adorable? It gets worse, Fangmore continued. They invented something called the Internet, where they voluntarily subject themselves to the opinions of millions of strangers. They do this for entertainment. They also created a system called social media, where they compete to see who can be most miserable while pretending to be happy. The room's temperature seemed to drop several degrees. They regularly consume plant matter that causes them physical pain because they enjoy the sensation, Fangmore read on. They jump out of perfectly functional aircraft for fun. They voluntarily watch horror movies designed to frighten them, then critique the monster designs for realism. It was at this moment that Marcus cheerfully wandered into their strategy meeting, carrying what appeared to be a steaming cup of the coffee he'd taught Squeaks to make. Oh, hey guys, he said brightly, completely oblivious to the existential crisis unfolding around him. I couldn't help but overhear. Were you talking about hunting? That's so cool that you're predators. I was wondering when someone was going to mention that. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. You knew? Vexstar managed. Well, yeah. The ceremonial bone ornaments, the territorial markings on your ship, the intimidation displays, the trophy room. Pretty obvious, really. I mean, you guys are textbook apex predators. It's fascinating from an evolutionary perspective. Marcus took a sip of his coffee and continued with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. Though I have to say, You're not nearly as scary as the stuff we deal with on Earth. I mean, you should see a Canadian goose during nesting season. Or a honey badger. Or my Aunt Martha when someone takes the last dinner roll at Thanksgiving. He paused thoughtfully. Actually, now that I think about it, you guys would probably love Earth. We've got tons of dangerous wildlife that would probably appreciate your hunting traditions. Though you'd need to fill out some permit applications first. The paperwork can be a bit intimidating, but I could help you with that. Vextar stared at this human who had just casually admitted to knowing they were trying to hunt him while simultaneously offering to help them with bureaucracy. You're not afraid, he said, and it wasn't a question. Marcus laughed, the sound echoing through the war room like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Afraid? Of you guys? You're like living dinosaurs with better dental hygiene. This is the best day of my career. Wait until I tell my colleagues I met actual alien apex predators who still practice ritualistic hunting. The xenobiology department is going to lose their minds. And that's when it hit them. The terrible, awful, species-shaking realization that would haunt their dreams for generations to come. Humans weren't prey that had accidentally become dangerous. They were predators who had decided to be nice about it. The war room had taken on the atmosphere of a funeral parlor, where the deceased had been everyone's sense of purpose and self-worth. Vextar sat slumped in his command chair, staring at nothing, with the hollow gaze of someone whose entire identity had been gently but thoroughly dismantled by a cheerful xenobiologist armed with nothing but enthusiasm and organizational skills. So, Marcus said, settling into a chair that definitely hadn't been designed for human anatomy, but which he made work anyway. I'm guessing the whole hunting expedition thing isn't really working out for you guys anymore. Feng Mor let out what could only be described as a whimper. We are the shadow hunters of the void. For 10,000 years our ancestors have stalked the darkness between stars, bringing terror to lesser species across the galaxy. That's a really impressive legacy, Marcus said sincerely. Though, to be honest, the market for professional terror is probably pretty limited these days. Have you guys ever considered career counseling? Squeaks bounced forward eagerly, his earlier trauma apparently forgotten in the face of new possibilities. What's career counseling? Well, Marcus explained, warming to the topic like a guidance counselor who'd found their calling. It's where you look at your existing skills and find new ways to apply them. Like, you guys are clearly excellent hunters with fantastic attention to detail, great organizational hierarchies, and impressive dedication to your craft. Vextar's head tilted with the cautious hope of someone who'd been told they might not be completely worthless after all. Continue. Think about it. You've got incredible tracking abilities, you understand territorial behavior, you know how to work as a coordinated team, and you've got great presentation skills. That translates to tons of career options. Marcus pulled out his notebook and started sketching organizational charts with the enthusiasm of someone planning a wedding. Wildlife photography, for instance. You already know how to track creatures across multiple star systems. Instead of hunting them, you could document their behaviors. The Galactic Geographic Society would pay serious money for that kind of expertise. Skarma perked up slightly. We would still be stalking prey? Absolutely, just with cameras instead of weapons. Much better profit margins too. No messy cleanup, no storage issues, and you can sell the same footage to multiple buyers. Feng Mor was actually taking notes now. What other options exist? Oh, tons, Marcus said, flipping to a new page. Planetary security consultation. You guys know how to identify threats and neutralize them. Every colony world needs that kind of expertise. Or ecotourism guides. Take people on safe expeditions to see dangerous wildlife up close. You've got the knowledge and the protective instincts to keep clients safe while giving them the thrill of danger. The aliens were leaning forward now, their existential crisis temporarily forgotten in the face of practical career advice. There's also wildlife relocation services, Marcus continued. Some planets have invasive species problems. You could offer to capture and relocate dangerous creatures without killing them. Very eco-friendly, great public relations value. Vextar straightened in his chair for the first time in hours. These humans would pay us to remove dangerous creatures from their worlds. Oh, definitely. We're always having problems with things that want to eat our livestock or tourists. Professional creature removal would be huge, though you'd probably want to get certified first. Humans love certifications. Squeaks was practically vibrating with excitement. Could we get business cards? Absolutely. Professional business cards are essential. Maybe something with your ship's silhouette and a catchy slogan. Something like, Shadow Hunters, removing your dangerous wildlife problems with professional discretion. Or, no creature too deadly, no planet too remote. The transformation was remarkable. What had been a group of defeated predators was rapidly becoming an entrepreneurial small business planning committee. "What about our ship?" Fanmore asked. "Would we need modifications for these new career paths?" "Some retrofitting would probably help," Marcus agreed. "Convert the trophy room into equipment storage. Maybe add some photography studios. Upgrade your communication systems for client relations. I could help you with the technical specifications if you want." Vextar was actually smiling now, which was a terrifying sight, but in an entirely different way than intended. "Marcus Webb of Earth, you have given us more than we could have imagined." "Oh, it's nothing," Marcus waved dismissively. "Just problem solving, though I do have one more suggestion." "Anything," Squeak said eagerly. "Well, you mentioned you have a whole fleet network, right? You could franchise the operation. Different crews could specialize in different services. Some focus on photography, others on relocation, maybe a few on security consultation. You'd have a whole interstellar business empire." The silence that followed was the sound of minds being blown and life purposes being completely redefined. "There is one small problem," Vextar said slowly. "We may have already sent somewhat threatening messages to several dozen species announcing our intention to hunt them." Marcus brightened. "Oh, that's easy to fix. Just send follow-up messages explaining the career change. Maybe offer them discounted rates on your new services as an apology for the confusion. Turn it into a marketing opportunity." 6 months later, Marcus would receive a business card made from what appeared to be crystallized starlight, advertising Shadow Hunters Interstellar, premium wildlife services across the galaxy. The testimonials on the back included glowing reviews from 17 different species, and there was a handwritten note from Squeaks mentioning that their coffee blend had become so popular they'd started a side business. But that day, as Marcus watched a group of former apex predators enthusiastically planning their business model and discussing the finer points of customer service, he couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best way to defeat a predator wasn't to fight back. Sometimes you just had to help them find a better job. "Oh, one more thing," he added, as they were wrapping up their impromptu business planning session. "You guys are going to need to work on your customer service skills. I know a species that could really help with that. They're called humans, and trust me, if you can satisfy a human customer, you can handle anything the galaxy throws at you." The former Shadow Hunters of the Void exchanged glances, and for the first time in their proud warrior history, they actually looked forward to learning something new, even if it did involve dealing with something called a complaint form.